Echoes from the void between stars whispered with the faint hum of the Zaxian warship Invincible. Commander Thrax stood on the observation deck, his four eyes scanning the endless black. His scaled skin shimmered under the dim lights as he contemplated the mission ahead. For 3,000 cycles, the Zaxian Empire had ruled this arm of the galaxy unopposed. Their history spoke of countless species conquered, assimilated, or extinguished. None more significant than the extinction of the humans. The humans. Even after 40 millennia, the name stirred something primal in Zaxian memory. They had been different from other conquered species. Tenacious, unpredictable, dangerous. Most conquered civilizations submitted when faced with overwhelming force. Humans fought to their last breath. The old records told of the final stand at Sol, how the Zaxian armada had reduced their homeworld to molten slag while the last human defenders hurled themselves against the invaders in ships barely holding together. Commander. The voice of his second-in-command, Jaxar, interrupted his thoughts. The anomaly has intensified. Science Division reports energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Thrax's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair remained fixed on the distant stars. Distance to the anomaly? 3 light cycles, sir. We'll arrive within the rotation. Thrax clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. This far-flung sector of space held nothing of value, a scattering of dead worlds circling aging stars. The High Command would not have dispatched a warship of the Invincible's caliber for a routine investigation. But the energy signature detected by their long-range sensors had defied classification. In an empire built on catalogued knowledge, the unknown was intolerable. Prepare a full tactical spread upon arrival, Thrax ordered. Whatever this anomaly is, I want weapons locked the moment we drop from hyperspace. The journey to the coordinates passed in tense silence. The crew of the Invincible were veterans, the elite of the Zaxian fleet, yet Thrax sensed their unease. Something about this mission felt wrong, like swimming through a silent ocean knowing a predator lurked below. Dropping to sublight in 3, 2, 1. The starfield stabilized as the massive warship tore back into normal space. Immediately, the tactical display lit up with warnings. Multiple contacts, Jaxar shouted, his voice rising an octave. Detecting... Sir, I count over 200 vessels of unknown configuration. Thrax felt his blood run cold. No unregistered species in this sector possessed such numbers. Visual confirmation. The main view screen flickered to life and the bridge fell silent. Against the backdrop of stars hung ships unlike any the Zaxians had encountered. Sleek, angular, vessels that seemed to bend the light around them, their hulls a deep obsidian that absorbed rather than reflected the distant starlight. They formed a perfect crescent formation, motionless and waiting. No energy signatures, reported the sensor officer. They're running silent, sir. Our scans can barely detect their mass. Impossible, Thrax murmured. Every ship required power, engines, life support weapons, unless open communications, he ordered. Standard Imperial greeting followed by identification request. The communications officer worked his console. Channel open, sir. Broadcasting now. Seconds stretched into minutes, with no response. The unknown fleet remained in formation, silent and watchful. Sir, Jaxar said quietly, recommend immediate withdrawal and report to High Command. Before Thrax could respond, the view screen flickered. The image of the waiting fleet vanished, replaced by a face. A human face. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouted in disbelief. Sensors blared warnings, but Thrax could only stare. The face before him was undeniably human, yet subtly different from the ancient records. The skin was paler, almost luminescent. The eyes, too large, too aware, gleamed with an inner light that spoke of changes beyond mere evolution. Impossible, Thrax whispered. Your kind was extinguished. We burned your world to ash. The human's lips curved into what the old records called a smile, but there was no warmth in it. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through the ship's speakers but directly in Thrax's mind. You tried, the voice said, each word falling like ice. You failed. On the tactical display, the unknown fleet, the human fleet, began to move, not toward the Invincible but outward, expanding their formation with fluid precision. Weapons! Thrax snapped out of his shock. Lock all batteries and fire! The Invincible's weapon systems roared to life, unleashing streams of plasma toward the nearest human vessels. The shots crossed the void and passed through their targets as if they weren't there. Direct hits registered, but, "Sir, no impact." "No damage." The weapons officer's voice cracked with disbelief. On the view screen, the human's smile widened. 40,000 years, Commander. 40,000 years to remember. 40,000 years to evolve. 40,000 years to prepare. The first human ship accelerated toward the Invincible with impossible speed. Thrax barked orders for evasive maneuvers, but the massive warship was too slow. The human vessel didn't fire. It simply passed through the Invincible as if the Zaxian warship were no more substantial than starlight. Systems failed across the ship. Lights flickered and died. The artificial gravity wavered, and everywhere, on every screen, a single word appeared. "Run! Get us out of here!" Thrax roared. "Emergency! Jump now!" The hyperdrive engine strained as the navigator frantically input coordinates. The human fleet continued their silent approach. More vessels passing through the Invincible, each transit leaving more systems dead. "Hyperdrive at critical," the engineer reported. "Sir, they're doing something to our technology. It's like they're unmaking it at the quantum level." With a final shudder, the Invincible tore free of normal space, the stars streaking into lines as they fled. But the damage was done. Half the ship's systems were offline, and a third of the crew lay unconscious, their neural implants burned out by whatever the human ships had done. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace, Thrax struggled to process what he had witnessed. Humans, alive, changed, and now returning to a galaxy that had thought them extinct for 40 millennia. "Sir?" Jaxar approached, his scales pale with shock. "The navigation system managed to capture data on their fleet's movements before we jumped. They're not pursuing us." "No," Thrax said quietly. "They don't need to. They wanted us to escape." "I don't understand." Thrax looked at his second-in-command, all four eyes blinking slowly. "They want us to deliver their message. They want us to spread the word." On the one functioning view screen in the command center, the single word still pulsed. "Run." Elsewhere in the cold of space, aboard the human flagship Reclamation, Admiral Helena Reeves watched the Zaxian warship flee into hyperspace. Her augmented vision could track its energy trail long after it had disappeared from normal sensors. "They'll return with reinforcements," said her second-in-command, a man whose body was more machine than flesh after centuries of enhancement. Helena nodded, her thoughts already reaching out to the fleet consciousness, the merged minds of 10,000 captains and crews linked in perfect unity. "Let them come. Let them bring their entire empire." Around her, the bridge of the Reclamation hummed not with machinery but with thought. The ship itself was semi-alive, its systems bound to her consciousness. The same was true for every vessel in the human fleet. They were no longer merely pilots and crews operating ships. They had become one with their vessels, transcending the boundaries between biology and technology that had limited their ancestors. "The Zaxians will have kept records," Helena said. "They'll remember what happened to Earth. They'll know what they did to us. And now they'll learn what we've become," her second-in-command finished. Helena turned her gaze outward, toward the heart of the Zaxian Empire. 40,000 years ago, humanity had been on the brink of interstellar expansion when the Zaxians arrived. The attack had come without warning or provocation, a preemptive strike against a species the Zaxians had deemed too dangerous to allow into the galactic community. They had been right to fear humanity, but their attempt to exterminate the human race had failed. A handful of colony ships had escaped the destruction of Earth, fleeing not toward the galactic core where the Zaxians ruled, but outward, into the dark between galaxies. There, in the void where no empire ventured, humanity had rebuilt, evolved, and prepared. "Send word to the vanguard fleets," Helena ordered. Operation Remembrance begins now. Across vast distances, her thoughts reached out to the other human, armadas waiting at the edges of Zaxian space. The message was simple, primal, and carried the weight of 40 millennia of purpose. We have returned. And they will remember why they feared us. Reckoning Emperor Zax Kalor felt the weight of 8,000 years of rule as he studied the holographic projection of his empire. Dozens of star systems pulsed red, communication outposts gone silent, frontier colonies fallen dark, entire battle groups vanished without distress calls. The pattern was clear. Something was systematically dismantling the outer reaches of his domain. "The scout vessel Invincible has arrived, Eternal One," announced his chamberlain. "Commander Thrax requests immediate audience." The Emperor waved, a clawed hand in assent. The grand doors to the throne room parted and a single Zaxian entered. The Emperor's inner eyes narrowed. Thrax's scales had lost their luster and his posture spoke of exhaustion beyond physical fatigue. "Rise, Commander," the Emperor said. "Tell me what you have found." Thrax's voice was hoarse. "Humans, Eternal One. The humans have returned." A cold silence fell across the throne room. The Emperor's advisors exchanged glances of disbelief and alarm. Humanity was a closed chapter in Imperial history, a potential rival eliminated before they could challenge Zaxian dominance. "Impossible," hissed Supreme General Vorzax. "We destroyed their homeworld. Our ancestors burned their colonies. None survived. Some escaped," Thrax said. "Beyond the Gulf, to the dark spaces. And they have changed." The Emperor leaned forward on his crystalline throne. "Explain." "Their technology defies our understanding. Their ships moved through, ours as if we weren't there. Our weapons had no effect, and they spoke not with communications technology but directly into our minds." Thrax's eyes flickered with remembered terror. "They left us a message for the Empire." "What message?" the Emperor asked, though something in him already knew the answer. "Run!" The Emperor's advisors erupted in outrage. Threats against the Empire were met with swift and total annihilation. It had been the way of things since the first Emperor united the Zaxian worlds. Silence. The Emperor rose from his throne. "Commander Thrax, what is your assessment of their capabilities?" Thrax hesitated. "Eternal One, in my judgment, we are facing an adversary beyond our comprehension. The humans we exterminated were primitives barely reaching for the stars. These beings, they are to those humans what we are to mindless prey beasts. During our encounter, I felt them looking not at our ships but through them, as if they could see the very quantum structure of matter itself and unmake it at will." The Emperor turned to his war council. "Deploy the Grand Armada, all of it. I want these humans contained and destroyed before word of their return spreads to the tributary species." As the generals hurried to obey, the Emperor gestured for Thrax to remain. "There is something else, isn't there, Commander?" Thrax lowered his gaze. "Yes, Eternal One. Before we escaped, I received impressions, images, memories that were not my own." He struggled for words. "I saw Earth burning. I felt the deaths of billions. But I also saw their escape ships fleeing not toward known space, but outward into the void between galaxies." "The dark expanse?" The Emperor's voice held genuine surprise. "Nothing survived there. For 40,000 years they endured there. They built. They evolved. And they remembered." Thrax's voice dropped to a whisper. "Eternal One, they showed me glimpses of what they became. Out there, with no stars to sustain them, they learned to harvest energy from the quantum fabric itself. They merged with their machines. They transcended their biological limitations. The beings returning now are as far beyond humanity as humanity was beyond its ape ancestors." The Emperor sat heavily on his throne. "You believe we cannot win this war. I believe, Eternal One, that this is not a war, this is a reckoning." 3 days later, the Grand Armada of the Zaxian Empire, 10,000 warships, the mightiest fleet ever assembled, dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates where the human fleet had been encountered. They found nothing but empty space. Admiral Zorkale, Supreme Commander of the Armada, was about to order a search pattern when every system on every ship simultaneously displayed the same message. "Behind you." The Admiral spun in his command chair. Through the viewport he watched in horror as space itself seemed to fold. Where there had been nothing, thousands of obsidian vessels now hung in perfect formation. They had not arrived. They had simply unveiled themselves, as if they had been there all along, waiting. At the center of the human formation, a massive vessel pulsed with inner light. Unlike the other ships, this one broadcast an energy signature deliberately, a beacon meant to be found, meant to be challenged. "Target the flagship," Admiral Zorkale ordered. "All ships, maximum firepower, 10,000 vessels unleashed there." Fury. Planet-killing energies converged on the human flagship, enough power to shatter a small moon. The humans made no attempt to evade. The deluge of firepower reached the human vessel and simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no shield flare, no evidence the attack had ever occurred. It was as if the energy had been absorbed into another dimension entirely. In response, the human flagship began to glow brighter. Not with weapon systems powering up, but with something else, a light that seemed to bend reality around it. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, voice shaking, "I'm detecting changes in our fleet." On the tactical display, Zaxian warships began to vanish, not destroyed, but transformed. Their matter reconfigured at the quantum level into something else. Where mighty dreadnoughts had been, delicate crystalline structures now drifted, beautiful and harmless. "What are they doing to our ships?" the Admiral demanded. His answer came not from his officers, but from a new presence on the bridge. A holographic projection, no, something more substantial, of a human female appeared before him. She wore a uniform of shifting midnight blue that seemed to contain galaxies in its fabric. "We are showing mercy," she said, her voice echoing in his mind. "Something your kind denied us." Admiral Zorkale drew his ceremonial blade. "Who are you?" "Admiral Helena Reeves, Earth Reclamation Fleet." Her eyes, too bright, too aware, studied him with clinical detachment. "The last human born on Earth before you destroyed it. I was 5 years old when I watched your ancestors burn my world." "Impossible," the Admiral snarled. "No human could live 40,000 years." "Time passes differently in the void," she replied, "and we have transcended such biological constraints. Your concept of life and death no longer applies to us." Around them, the bridge crew backed away, weapons trained on the manifestation before them. "What do you want?" the Admiral asked. "Revenge? Territory? Resources?" Helena Reeves smiled, but the expression held no warmth. "Understanding. We want your empire to understand the consequence of its actions. For 40 millennia, the Zaxian Empire has expanded unchecked, destroying any species that might one day challenge your dominance. You call it security. We call it genocide." "We built order," the Admiral countered. "Before the Empire, this galaxy was chaos. Your order. On your terms." Helena gestured, and suddenly they were no longer on the bridge but floating in space among the transformed Zaxian ships. "We could have destroyed your entire species as you attempted to destroy ours. Instead, we choose a different path." The Admiral found himself face to face with Emperor Zax Kalor, who had somehow been transported from the Imperial throne world. The Emperor looked as disoriented as the Admiral felt. "Your empire ends today," Helena told them both. "But your species will survive. We are remapping the neural pathways of every Zaxian in your fleet, and through them, eventually your entire species. You will retain your knowledge, your history, your identity, but you will lose the capacity for unprovoked aggression. You will never again strike first. You're rewriting our minds?" The Emperor's voice shook with rage and fear. "What gives you the right?" "The same right you claimed when you decided humanity was too dangerous to exist," Helena answered. "The right of survival. The difference is that we choose not to exterminate." Around them, the transformed Zaxian ships began to pulse with new energy. Not the harsh red of their weapon systems, but a softer blue light that spoke of different technologies, different purposes. Your ships will return to your worlds carrying our message and our changes, Helena continued. The Zaxian Empire will dissolve into a federation of equals. Your tributary species will be freed. And humanity will take its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as guardians against the kind of extinction you once dealt so casually. And if we refuse? The Admiral asked, although he already suspected the answer. You won't, Helena said simply. You can't, it's already done. The Admiral felt something shift in his mind, subtle at first, then overwhelming. Ancient imperatives of conquest and dominance became meaningless, replaced by concepts that had been foreign to Zaxian thought. Cooperation, empathy, coexistence. He tried to summon rage at this violation and found he could not. What have you done to us? The Emperor whispered. We've given you the capacity to understand why we've done this, Helena replied. In time, you may even thank us. With that, the Admiral found himself back on his bridge. The human fleet was already withdrawing, their obsidian ships folding, back into whatever dimension they inhabited when not interacting with normal space. On every screen throughout the Armada, a final message appeared. We could have told you to run. Instead, we're giving you the chance to walk with us. 40,000 years after humanity's apparent extinction, the galaxy awakened to a new reality. The species that had been condemned to die returned not as vengeful ghosts but as transcendent beings who remembered their humanity enough to choose mercy over retribution. The Zaxian Empire became the Galactic Concord. Dozens of formerly subjugated species took their place as equals, and human ships appeared at the edges of inhabited worlds not as conquerors, but as teachers, sharing the knowledge gained during their long exile. On what had once been the imperial throne world, now the conquered, center a memorial stood, a simple obelisk of earthstone somehow recovered or recreated by human technology. Upon it was inscribed not a message of triumph or even forgiveness, but a reminder to all species who read it. We remember what we were. We know what we could become. Choose wisely. Commander Thrax, now Representative Thrax of the Conquered Council, often stood before this monument. The neural changes imposed by the humans had not erased his memory of terror at their return, but had given him the context to understand it. Fear had transformed into respect, and eventually, gratitude. Do you regret it? He asked the human representative who sometimes joined him there. Admiral Helena Reeves, still appearing as she had on that first day, unchanged by the passage of years, considered the question. Regret showing mercy? Never, she said. In the Mawaidim void between galaxies, we could have become something monstrous. We could have returned as the very destroyers your ancestors feared. Instead, we held on to what made us human, the capacity to rise above our pain. The capacity for change, Thrax added. Yes, Helena agreed, looking up at the stars where human and Zaxian ships now moved together in harmony. That, above all else, in the vast darkness between stars, the message that had once been a warning, run, had become an invitation, evolve. And throughout the galaxy, life answered the call.